Okay, it's Chris Zarzicki, and today we're going to talk about passing. Now, I was going to do this in a PowerPoint, but I said I'll have some more fun if I can play with slot cars. So that's what we're going to do. So what I've laid out here, if I slowly pan, is you see I've just put together a simple 90-degree turn, okay, with obviously the apex in the middle. I'm going to call this the turn-in point for the turn. I actually took a rod, bent it, and that's approximately to get the widest arc through the turn. We're not going to play turn braking at this point. We're going to be fairly conventional, traditional, widest arc line. And we've got the braking point back here where the two cars are. Now, obviously the braking point probably would be a lot further than that, but because of the scale of what I'm working with, we're gonna call that the braking point. So, in traditional racing rules, this is going back even into the 60s, the car that got to the braking point first would be the car that had the turn. Now, if this car, the yellow car, and let's do a little bit of a zoom in here. Okay, if this yellow car was back there so that its wheels were only just even with the back wheels of the other car, under traditional racing rules, he would have to back out and give the corner to the other driver. Obviously, if he is even or slightly ahead, then he controls the turn, because the outside car cannot turn in until that car turns. So at this point, pretty straightforward. The yellow car on the inside is the one that has the turn. Here's where it gets tricky. Now the rules have changed. The first rule that changed was the braking zone. So if we'll zoom out a little bit, come back here. Now say the car on the outside was here, and this car is here. Okay? Under traditional rules, you would say the car on the outside still has the corner. However, we haven't finished the braking zone yet. If the car on the inside brakes later than the car on the outside, remember, we're not turning in yet. The car on the outside cannot legitimately turn in because it would be blocking, because you'd be making a move. Once the other car even gets a wheel alongside of you, if you move, you're considered blocking. So the car on the outside has to still go in a straight line. The car on the inside, of course, has the whole inside of the track to do whatever he wants to. So he's controlling this. So let's take this another step forward. So the car on the outside moves forward. Now the car on the inside, of course, is now even. Okay? Again, the car on the inside now controls the turning of the car on the outside. So at this point, again, it's the car on the inside that has a line. If we get up to the turn-in point and they're still even, again, no question, the guy on the inside has the turn. Okay, so again, that was the second area. We moved from the initial braking point. Now we've moved the passing zone to the end of the braking zone. In the late 60s, early 70s, Mark Donohue came up with a theory, and Skip Barber and some other schools took it to its logical conclusion, and that is you can turn and brake at the same time. So now we have a situation where instead of the race being to the turn-in point or to the end of the braking zone, which would, I should say the start of the braking zone at first and now the start of the turn-in zone, now we have a race to the apex. Okay? Let's show you why. Say this car on the outside has now started his turn. Okay? The guy on the inside has now moved to that point. Now again, you would normally say that the guy on the outside, because he's ahead, has the turn. However, the car on the inside still has the whole width of the track to turn in. So if the car on the outside has already done its braking and is now in a steady state cornering situation, but the car on the inside is still braking, he's still carrying more speed. So if I could do like a time-elapsed thing, what we would show is this would be moving at a constant speed, but he would be getting closer. Okay? He would be moving at a constant speed. He is still decelerating. So now we end up with a situation like this. Okay? Now, at this point, they're both pretty much at the same speed. Now, whose turn is it? Well, again, the guy on the inside would love to turn. His line typically would intersect the car on the inside. But the car on the inside is now level with the guy on the outside. So he controls. The guy on the outside cannot turn in with a car in the way. Physics pretty much states that two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. So again, we're playing the race to the apex. So now, even if they're at even speeds, when you get down to here, we get down to the apex, okay, it's clear that they're either going to do one of two things. Either the guy on the outside is going to give up and let the guy on the inside go, or they're going to go through the turn side by side. So here's where it gets tricky. Okay? If at the apex they're side by side, which happens quite often, now both drivers have to make a decision. The guy on the outside knows that because the car on the inside has turned a sharper turn, he's going to have a slower exit speed. The guy on the outside, because he's doing a larger radius, is going to have a higher exit speed. So if they just stay side by side, then the guy on the outside will come out faster. So if we move a little bit further out, you're going to be in a situation like this, where the car on the outside is starting now to out-accelerate the car on the inside. However, it's kind of a dangerous move, because the guy on the inside, while he cannot turn out to get to the tracking point, okay, the problem is that he is in a situation where he could drift out into the car that's on the outside. So the question you're going to have is, do you feel lucky, punk? You know, do you want to be the guy on the outside, or, now let's back it up. If you're in a situation like this, obviously the guy on the inside has the turn. As he goes through the turn, he's going to slide wide. The car on the outside can turn in, and as this guy is accelerating out here, he could be doing the over-under. And now he controls. Now, depending upon what the turn is after this, if it's a straightaway, it's going to be a drag race. If it's a left-hand turn, obviously the advantage is going to go to the car, the yellow car that's now on the outside. If it was a left-hand turn after this right-hand turn, then it would have been better for him to do the side-by-side and try to position himself for the next turn. But if, say, the next turn was another right-hand turn, then as this guy drifted out, this guy would want to be on the inside in order to do the over-under. So that is a little bit of the traditional pass and some of the complications. As you can see, we've gone from this, where the traditional move was that if the car on the inside was not even with the car on the outside when they got into the braking zone, it was the guy on the outside's line. Then we moved, as technology improved, we moved to this point where if you weren't even with the guy at the end of the braking zone, the beginning of the turn-in zone, it was still the guy on the outside's line. Now, with turn braking, it's who's the best on the brakes and turning to get to the apex. So you can see how you can have two cars with different drivers, different capabilities, and it can get really tricky as to when the pass. Now, at this point, there has been no pass completed on either side. Both drivers are still absolutely 50-50 responsible for a safe pass, because the guy on the outside, he controls the car on the inside from moving out. Okay, the guy on the inside controls the ultimate speed of the turn. So when people say it's the responsibility of the car on the inside, or the yellow car in this case, to make the pass, it was true up to a certain point. Now it shifts back to a 50-50 responsibility, and that's where things get tricky. What we'll do next, in the next video, is we'll throw a third car into the situation and show how that really can mess things up. This is Chris Zarzicki and The Art of Passing.